Hello and welcome back to my scripting tutorial for Super Fighters Deluxe. Today we will take a look at something a bit more advanced, which is, we'll try to make an UI or like user interface, all the buttons and stuff, but without the player actually clicking the buttons. So I don't mean these buttons. I'm sure you know how to use these buttons. And we'll take a look at how to create like menu screens and things like that. So and we will also take a look at some other things as well, which you might encounter when making these. So let's start with just making a couple like options. So this will be my let's just call it #1 and #2 because it's very original. Okay, so let's say we have these two options and we have different things that should happen. So I don't know, this will do an explosion and this will do a fire explosion, for example, right? That's the plan. Okay, first we want to somehow get the player to be in control of the menu. So for example, if let's say when the player enters the area, this area for example, then they will get to choose option 1 or option 2. So I will set the enabled object types to only players, so we don't have to check if it's a player or not in the code. And the enter method will be I don't know, options, for example. Okay, so and in the code we'll create a new public void options with trigger args. Okay, and when the player triggers this area, we will take away the control of the character from them and make them to make a choice here. Let's actually have more options because it will be easier to see later. None of this works yet. We'll make it as we go along. So yeah, first thing is that we need the player who entered the area. So player and we'll get the args.sender as player, exactly. Okay, so that will take the sender, and we know it's a player because that's the only type we allow here. And to get the control from the player, we need to say player dot to read what the player is doing, we need to set the input mode set input mode to read only. The slight problem with this is when you run into the area, you keep your animation. You see my HP is gone and everything. I can't click any buttons to do anything, but my character keeps running. So to solve that issue, the simplest way is to we get the user and store it in a variable. Like so, and after we call this, we say player.setUser, And just before we steal the control from the player, we will say set user null, like this. And now when you run into the area, the animation stops and I'm not doing anything. If I like dive inside, it will still be fine. Okay, now I'm crouching, but that's not a big issue. Okay, so this read only allows us to read the keys. You might think, wait, can't you always read the keys by using this key press method? Yes, you can, but this is different. First, it disables the control of the player, so we cannot move our character, but we still can read the keys, which is exactly what we want. The other options are enabled, disabled. So if it's disabled, the character cannot be controlled, but we also cannot read the keys. And when the input mode is enabled, that means the character can walk, run, jump, shoot, everything, and we still can read the keys. But now we want to read the keys, but not to control the player, so we use the read only option here. Okay, and now we need to create an events.user message callback. You might say, whoa, what the heck is this? That's some weird syntax, but I will explain it in a minute. I'll just actually, that's the wrong callback. I want in callback. Okay, so what is this? This is an anonymous function. I could actually use a real function, just if I have void control keys or something with these parameters here. Can't type it now. Like so. And I could put that here instead. It will work just fine. But I want to show you how to make anonymous functions, which is this way. They are called anonymous because you don't type their name, right? This is a normal function which has name, control keys, but this function is anonymous. It doesn't have any name. And you use this weird little arrow here and it says lambda expression, which, yeah, this is a lambda expression, or also known as anonymous function. Okay, so this will happen every time someone presses a key. Okay, first we need to check if the player who pressed the key is the same player who is in the who called the method. So I mean, in single player it's really not necessary, but if there are multiple people, then you should be doing this. If there are multiple people, you actually also have to check if someone is already using the menu or not. But if you are okay with multiple people using the menu at once, then this is just fine. Okay, so if the player pressed a key, we want to know if... Oh yeah, this is an array of all the keys which were pressed, so we need to check every key that is pressed. So for each this virtual key info in this infos collection, we can check if the event is pressed, like this. We can also check if the key was released, but I want stuff to happen when the key is pressed, so I will use pressed. So when the key is pressed, and then we will check what key it was. So if the key was, you can actually use a switch statement here like this. Switch and use the info dot key, and it will tell you all the keys that can be pressed. We don't really need most of them. But I want the activate and the up and down keys, like so. Okay, so if the player presses any of them, then we will know. Let's just use like show chat message to make sure this is actually happening. So this is up, this would be down, and this is activate. Okay, so first nothing happens, I'm pressing up and down, nothing is happening, and if I go into the area and I press up, it says up in the chat, or down, or when I press F, then it says activate, so it works fine. Okay, but that's not very useful, is it? So instead of doing this, we will have a variable here, index, which will start at 0, and when I press up, the index will go up, and when I press down, the index will go down. Okay, why do I need it? Because I want to select the options, right? And when I press up, I want to select next option, and when I press down, I want to select the previous option. Actually, if you take a look here, when I press up, I actually move down, right? Because 1, 2, 3, it's kinda upside down, which looks normal here, right? So I will actually do it the other way around. When you press up, the index will go down. Because if you are on the 3 and you press up, then you want to end up on 2, not on like 4. Okay, so that's the first step. We'll also make a check here. Actually, before we do any of this, we should make sure we are aware of all the options. So I will call this opt1, for example, opt1, opt2, and opt3, and this will be action action 1, action 2, and action 3. Action 3. Okay, and here in the startup we'll do some setup. So let's do int option, which will be 3 in this case, and we will do for from 1 up to 3, including 3, so less or equal to option count. What we'll do is game.getObject, actually we need to store the data somewhere, so let's make a structure for it. We will use a dictionary again. Dictionaries are just good. So this will be as the key, we will have the Actually, let's have two lists, probably that will be better. We should honestly make a class out of this, but I think that's could be unnecessarily complicated because we have only like two things here, right? So okay, I will have one dictionary where I will have the iObject text, and I will also have the object trigger as the other thing. So this will be my options, like so. So I will get the trigger by typing in action, and we will add the index after it, and we will cast it into the object trigger, and something similar for the text. So we will have object text, text for example, and it will be opt and the index, and we will also cast it as object text. Okay, right now it's just stored in the variable here in the loop, but we want to put it into the dictionary, so we'll do dictionary.add, and first we need to add text, and then we need to add the trigger. Okay. So now what we need to do is well, what we just did is we kind of stored this option 1 and this explosion trigger into one like entry in the dictionary. The second option is linked to this fire circle thing, and the third one will spawn a barrel, hopefully. Okay, so yeah, here let's say we are at index 1. Actually, let's make sure the index starts at 1, because we start counting from 1, not 0, so let's make sure the index starts at 1. Okay, but what if you are at index 1 and you press up? Then the index will be 0 and we have no option 0, right? So we need to make sure the index is still in range. We can do that in multiple ways. I will show you one of the, I guess, easier ways. Is just adding an if statement, and if the index is less than 1, then index is 1. Okay, so if the index is 1 and we pressed up, the index will be 0, which is 0 is less than 1, so it will be back at 1. Okay. We can actually type this a little bit nicer, because it's just a short code. We can just hit Ctrl V here and have it in one line like this, which is quite nice. The same goes here, but instead we'll check if the index is larger than the option count. So if we have the index is higher than the options, which means the index is 3, and you press down, then the index is 4. So this is the index is larger than option count, then we set it back to 3, so it doesn't like overflow basically. Okay. And we somehow need to highlight the selected option. Okay, so for that, let's make it like green if it's selected. Like this. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we'll make sure we color it back to white first. When the user presses anything, we will set the color to white of the selected index. So we'll use this element add and hopefully it will work as I think it will. So we'll put the index, we will subtract 1 from the index because in the dictionary the numbers kinda go from 0, right? But here the options start on 1, or at least I've decided they will start on 1. You could obviously name this 0, option 0 and action 0, but I've decided to do it this way, so here we will need to subtract the 1 from the index. Okay. And this will give us the key value pair, and we only want the key, which is the object text trigger. I mean just the object text, so text is this, and we want to set the color to white. So set text color with white, and we will do something similar in the end, except we will get the option, the new index. So if the index changed, we will have a different tile. We will set it to green. The color will be green. Okay, let's take a look if it works or not. So I spawn in, I run into the area, and if I press down, you see the 2 is selected or 3 is selected. So I can choose an option. If I press down here after 3, it doesn't break, and if I press up many times, it still doesn't break. So I can nicely switch between them. I hope it's visible. Yeah, it should be visible. Okay. And the final thing to do is, when we press activate, we will get the trigger here, object trigger, trigger, which is the value of the dictionary. I'm kinda misusing the dictionary, by the way, here. This is like relying on the element app is a bit unusual, but I think it's a good fit for this use, so I'm showing you how to do it. If you, I don't know, have a more complex way, you should probably go with a class at that point to make your life a bit easier, but I think the dictionary is alright here. So we'll simply trigger the trigger. Okay, and I will also put them a bit further away so I don't die instantly after I trigger them. So okay, if I go here and select number 2, it creates a fire explosion. If I set number 3, it spawns a barrel, and if I press 1, it creates a normal explosion. Okay. But let's say we don't want for the player to be able to do it multiple times. We want him to just make one choice and that's it. So what we want to do after this activation happens, we want to give the player the control back. So we will do enable, the player input mode enabled, so you can control your character after this. And what we also want to do is to stop this this callback listener, right? Okay, how do you do that? You need to declare it first, and set it to null like this, and save it when you start it. And when you want to stop it, you simply say the name and do .stop. Okay. So if I walk in and press number 3, boom, now I can control my character. But if I enter the area again, I get to choose, and it's kinda broken because the last number is still selected. Right, if I press 2 here and enter the area again, you see the 1 and number 2 is selected at once, which is just weird. Well, at this point it really depends what you want to do. For example, I actually want to clean all of this up. I only want this to happen once. So let's create a destroy trigger. Which will destroy everything, and call it cleanup. There are actually 2 ways of doing this. You can simply take all of these triggers and on activate trigger select this trigger, which is actually the simpler way, so I will do it that way. You could also give it an ID and find it with the script and just trigger it, but this should work just fine. Also, by the way, in the map editor, when you press caps lock and press on a trigger, for example, you can see what other triggers are connected to it. I mean, you can always see that this destroy trigger will destroy these things, but when you press caps lock, then you can also see which triggers will trigger this trigger. Right. So that's quite useful. So keep that in mind. And you can also, I don't know, when I click on this text, it says that there is this arrow here, and I can take a look. Oh, this will get destroyed. Okay, so again, caps lock button, quite useful. And let's try if it all works. So I go in, select one of the options, and boom, it's done. And I can again control my character, and I didn't control anything else. So yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, you can post them in the comments. I will probably answer them, but I'd prefer if you ask on one of the Discord chats, because, well, I'm just more often there, and other people are more likely to see your question. If it's a good question, then, well, you know the drill. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial, and we'll take a look at something else next time. If you have any requests, feel free to, again, leave it in the comments or on ping me on Discord or something. And yeah, that's it. See ya.